Welcome to another episode of Fudgy Insights with your host, Jen.
And Jesse. Today's episode, we're going to be tackling selling during a pandemic.
Dun, 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 dun.
So for those of you that are watching, those of you that have been living through the last couple months, it's been a tough one. We've seen the whole world kind of be turned upside down by COVID-19. And everyone is feeling the effects differently, whether it's personal, whether it's health, whether it's familial. Certainly businesses are not immune to this. When we've seen it firsthand with our own business, and we've seen it with friends, we've seen it with families, and we've just seen it from reading about other businesses and stories. So we thought we'd talk a little bit about this, how we approach it during this time. We're not saying that this is the right way to do things. We're just going to give you a little bit of insight into how we've approached it during a very trying time. Hopefully, you can take some lessons away from that and possibly apply it to your own life as well.
It's absolutely been difficult. It's been difficult emotionally, where we've been confined to our homes for extended periods of time. And we know it's necessary that we need to stop the spread of COVID. We need to just help where we can. And it's been hard where seemingly overnight, the world stopped. And bills do not. So it's been difficult where we own a small business. And right when things are starting to really pick up, chocolate is no longer a necessity, where now people have to make decisions between what you absolutely need versus a nice to have. And when you're in the nice to have category, you're going to see a hit on your profit, on your margins, and you need to be ready to adapt.
So for a business like ours, we sell a moderately priced product. So if you're talking about economics of things, this is a product that is a non-essential or a non-necessity, but it's mediumly priced. You're talking about hearing about unemployment, you're talking about people losing their jobs, and it's creeping up into that 20 to 25%.
Which is unheard of.
And that's very scary. So we completely understand the idea of the necessities that you must have, whether it's car payments, rent, food, but not dessert or something like that. We get that. But we had to also learn ourselves, how do we continue to sell? Is it even, one, is it viable? Two, is it, in some way, is it offensive to be promoting your own product or yourself during this? Because why, Brigadeiros, how does that even matter compared to somebody who's struggling with their health or loved ones that are in the hospital or losing their jobs? That is probably one of the most difficult things to address.
Absolutely.
And then if you come to terms with that and say, listen, it's still our business, this is our livelihood, how do you even do that? How do you message that?
And that's been very difficult and somewhat tricky to navigate, because you want to advertise as aggressively as you possibly can. And especially now that more companies are coming into the digital world. So with a pandemic, people have had to adapt. You've had to take your once brick and mortar shop and figure out, how do I put this on a platform or be accessible when my front door is now closed? And so not only was competition fierce previously to the pandemic, now you have more people that are coming into the playground, so to say, and the slide is the same. So figuring out, how do you continue to sell, but tastefully? And we've gone back and forth where we've said, do we just stop advertising? Do we stop pushing your product and just take a pause until everything passes and be prepared to take losses and kind of figure it out? But at the same time, it is our livelihood, and we depend on the money and the income and the sales that we make from our businesses in order to keep the lights on. So it's been this very delicate balance of pushing our product without being offensive, without saying, you absolutely need this, without saying, well, or better yet, without jumping on the bandwagon where you see a lot of people using pandemics and getting into people's fears as a mechanism to make a sale. And we've stayed away from that, where we have kind of shifted our message where, yes, it's not essential, but it'll brighten your day. Let us bring some joy. Let our product tell someone that you miss them. It's a small token of love, appreciation, of support, of happiness.
So I've kind of taken an approach of an acronym. I think acronyms are helpful sometimes. Mnemonic devices are helpful when you study, but I like the acronyms. I like little abbreviations, just something to kind of, you could say it to yourself, almost like positive reinforcement in a way. So I've taken the one APT, A-P-T. So what does that mean? Jen's already touched upon most of it, but I'll just kind of restate it. Adaptability, right?
Yeah.
We have to be adaptable, but, go ahead.
You have to be adaptable always. As an entrepreneur, as a business owner, you need to be able to adapt. I've always been a pessimist. So I always planned for the worst case scenario. Did I plan for a pandemic? Absolutely not. But I was prepared to, there could be a moment in time where maybe we wouldn't make any sales.
I'm smiling because my adaptability in my head was actually just that, something in my head. So adaptability to me is an attitude. In an apt situation, you actually have to be willing to adapt. So I'm not talking about the physical adaptation yet. That's P. For me, the A is saying, oh shit, I need to do something differently. And doing something differently turns into that physical reaction. So to me, A is the willingness to change, or the knowing the need to change. That comes to P, which is pivot. Pivoting is something everyone is facing right now. Pivoting can be something as simple as, okay, you used to go into the office. I used to go into an office. Now I have to work from home in perpetuity, possibly. That's the pivot. For us, and for Klado, pivoting means, how do we change our marketing value? How do we change where we sell? Maybe how do we change where do we distribute, or how we distribute? There's any number of things that we could talk about in terms of pivoting and business during this time.
No, it's true. And pivoting it's key. Some individuals are very keen on remaining pure to whatever product they've set out to sell. Where, why am I going to introduce X, Y, and Z into my offerings? Or why should I have to change? But the world requires us to change, especially now. So things are no longer what they used to be.
I'll use an example, not from our own business, because it helps to learn from others. And this is not pandemic related or COVID related, but just in a general approach. We are friendly with, and we know several other dessert makers in the area, particularly ice cream shops. So that's a good example of having to pivot constantly. So ice cream, you may not see it on, well, you may probably do see it on this body. This body loves ice cream. I'll eat it any time of year, any time of day. You could wake me up in the middle of the night and feed me a sundae. I'd go back to sleep happily. Me, I'm like that. Now, Jen, on the other hand, you won't eat ice cream all the time.
Not really. But if you give me a bag of chips or French fries.
But most people are more like Jen in the sense of they don't need ice cream year round. So the window of opportunity to sell ice cream, let's say on a traditional kind of, New York seasonal type thing, let's say 3 seasons maybe, but that winter time is tough, and probably some late fall. And if you have a longer winter, you could be looking for 3 to 6 months where you're not really doing, strictly ice cream sales. So what do? You have a couple options. One is you could close seasonally, and some shops do. Mm-hmm. The second is you need to figure out what are your other options. You'll still make a small modicum of success with some ice cream, but what else are you going to sell? You could sell cupcakes, cookies,
alcohol,
brigadeiros,
mostly brigadeiros.
Other items to insert into your kind of menu and offering. And I guess a third one is kind of a variation of that, which is kind of hot items of sorts. I don't know what that would be, but you could do hot chocolates, other pastries, things like that. So anyway, But that's all examples of things, very practical examples of where ice cream shops need to pivot. They're faced with that every year. That's a recurring thing because you know the seasons are going to change. Yes, there may be some global warming coming in. You know, we may all be facing that. And it's a whole other story for another episode. But what you're talking about is a regular pivot. In this instance, and by the way, that pivot is anticipatory. You know it's coming. This one, no one knew.
No.
We didn't know.
No. And we saw, especially being in New York, you see numbers are creeping, you see things are changing. But until it impacts you, it's almost, well, we'll be fine. Why should I worry about that? But we all need to. And we were fortunate to just have a digital footprint. Our entire business is currently online. It's through our e-commerce. And so when pandemic really hit, we didn't necessarily have to stand up a website overnight, get our products in such a way where they can be shipped, they can be delivered. So that was definitely a positive, but it's also a bit scary because we were about to embark on that journey of brick and mortar, of getting storefronts, really expanding our reach. And overnight, that plan is put on hold.
That brings me to the last part of APT, APT, which is T. And I use it as triage. It's a medical term, but I think it applies to anything in this case. So what do I mean by triage? Triage would be, in theory, it's really to stop the bleeding of some sort. In this case, it may be stop the bleeding from your finances. Mm-hmm. So what are the different ways that you can mitigate that? So in this case, we have a production facility. Can you ask for rent reduction or something like that?
Reduction, forgiveness, deferment, anything. And we actually tried.
Unsuccessfully. Our landlord was not accommodating, and we've had to continue to pay throughout that, and we have continued to pay because we don't want to be in default. Now that's for a different story about, landlords and their inability to really acquiesce to some, needy, tenants, whether it's a large restaurant or a small business like ours. That's a different conversation. There are perhaps recurring orders that you have for suppliers. You can ask them for a reduction or maybe put deferment of payment or supplies. Maybe you don't need the full supply because your sales are not as good right now, so you may need it in the future, but not now. There are things that you can do, but triage. First, it's just thinking about what could you do to save? What could you do? Maybe it's a marketing budget that you have that you reduce. Maybe it's,
Staff.
Yeah.
I think that's been the other part is we have a very lean team. Very lean. And in some ways, it worked out because we are so lean. But yet, you have to, as a business owner, you have to look at everything in totality. Because at the end of this, not all of us will come out still in business. And that's a scary prospect that we are seeing in the New York, Jersey area. Businesses are already closing where they've made the decision not to come back. Some individuals are financially ruined. And one could say is how can reduced sales or reduced income over 3 months, 4 months, 6 month period completely derail a company? But the reality is most small businesses operate in very small margins, very small. And so that 10% that you're receiving on every sale is what's keeping you afloat. You're able to get a little bit of income to keep you, your family, keep the lights on. And now when that 10% is gone because your sales are now 20% of what they used to be, you're instantly in the negatives. So it's petrifying. And
we have coming out, you have the small business loans, the SBAs, you have the PP3s,
Mm-hmm.
if you have staff. Definitely keep up with those things. They're constantly changing. You might even have student loans from past, that you could be deferring at some point. The government is doing something. Just pay attention to that. And these things are confusing. They are 2,000-page documents. So if you don't want to read through it or you don't want to take the cliff notes, call somebody that might. reach out to somebody. You could shoot us an email. We'll help walk you through it if we can. We've been through it. It's not an easy thing to do. Friends and family and the people that you trust are going to help you through these times. And I'm not talking financially. I'm just talking about getting you through that, whether it's explaining something, whether it's chatting about an idea. Hey, under the P, if you're pivoting, hey, would this work? Do you think you'd buy this if we did this? Would this work in this scenario?
And also, right now, you have nothing to lose to pivot. So if you do pivot, it might work. And if it doesn't, that's okay, because you know what did work. It's just a matter of being adaptable, pivot,
Triage.
and triage.
Act.
Act.
So we know it's a difficult time for everyone. And, it's for now probably not getting much easier. I think the only thing that we can hope is that you're getting used to what this is. And by that, you may be able to implement some of these APTs into your own life.
And also, if you're tuning in and you're a consumer, which we all are, take a step back, and if you're able to, support your local business, support the small business, support the mom and pops out there, because every dollar right now matters. And your purchase, as small as it may be, will mean a lot to those individuals that are barely staying afloat and are in some ways putting their selves in harm's way to open up their doors and stay open and service you. So we've made it a point to support our local community, our local shops as much as we possibly can, because at the end of the day, we want to stay in business. We want them to stay in business. We want the world to still have small businesses and not be monopolized by 2 to 3 major players. So just go out there, support them. And if you're in the small business world like we are, stay optimistic, because things will get better. They might get worse, but they will get better. So don't give up, because in my mind, you've gotten this far. We can all get through this. We all just need to support each other. We need to help. We need Jesse's APT acronym to try to get you through the day. But just do what you have to, and we're here for you guys too. So any questions, reach out. Any comments, find us.
So thank you for your support, and thanks for tuning in.
Until next time. And as we like to say,
Fudge it
till you make it.